Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a massive, fundamental shift in the landscape of global security. Think about how insanely fast your smartphone processes data today. Now imagine taking that exact same speed and applying it to global combat. We're looking closely at how emerging, high-velocity technologies are fundamentally altering the speed, scale, and ethical boundaries of modern warfare. We are moving from an era of human-directed combat into something far more complex and, frankly, much, much faster.
Let's dive right in with a pretty chilling realization from military researchers over at Sinjos. They sum up this whole shift in just two short sentences. This is not automation, this is autonomy. We are crossing a critical threshold right now, where machines don't just execute pre-programmed GPS coordinates anymore. Instead, they're equipped with target recognition algorithms and independent firing logic. They are using their own real-time assessment of battlefield conditions to make lethal decisions, completely without a human pulling the trigger.
To wrap our heads around this, here's our roadmap for today. We'll look at the future war landscape, check out space as the new high ground, dive into hypersonics and lasers, the autonomous swarm imperative, how algorithms are erasing human control, and finally, reclaiming global strategic stability. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Space, the new high ground. This is the macro level of multi-domain operations, and honestly, we have to start here because all terrestrial combat today relies almost entirely on the silent infrastructure orbiting right above us.
When you look at the military's space vision, you realize that if you were to look at Earth from space today, it's really no longer just this serene blue marble, right? It's a highly networked grid. There's this stark military admission that friendly ground forces are now operating under constant, inescapable surveillance from the space-based assets of competitors. There is quite literally nowhere to hide.
It's almost like a massive satellite network animation has come to life right over our heads. I mean, these networks provide deep sensing, beyond line-of-sight communications, and the exact targeting data that makes everything else on the battlefield possible. Controlling space and potentially deploying small satellite swarms is the absolute prerequisite for any future conflict.
Moving on to hypersonics and laser defense, the velocity problem. Because as we transition from the vacuum of space down into the Earth's atmosphere, this sheer velocity is completely breaking traditional defense models.
The contrast here is just staggering. On one side, you have a hypersonic missile traveling at Mach 5, and guys, this isn't just some hypersonic missile CGI from a sci-fi blockbuster. It's a very real, highly maneuverable threat that totally bypasses traditional radar and compresses warning times down to mere minutes. But they cost an absolute fortune. Countering them requires a major shift to directed energy weapons, like lasers, which strike at the speed of light for the cost of roughly a cup of coffee per interception.
And battlefield urgency is accelerating this shift as we speak. Take Ukraine's Sunray project, for example. It's this compact, truck-mounted laser system that silently ignites low-cost drones in a matter of seconds. Militaries are quickly realizing, hey, we can't keep firing multi-million-dollar missile interceptors at cheap, mass-produced drones. Energy is actively replacing traditional firepower.
Which leads perfectly into our next section, the autonomous swarm imperative, focusing on mass and coordination. What actually happens when these low-cost machines stop operating solo and start working as a collective?
Well, this is the reality of a modern drone swarm. Protocols like Swarm coordinate anywhere from 20 to 100 autonomous units, completely without a central human commander. They use consensus algorithms. It's basically like they're voting in fractions of a second on how to act collectively. If a few units get shot down, the network simply heals itself and keeps right on going. Military analysts note that this level of coordination can increase attack lethality by a staggering 50%.
And that brings us to algorithms erasing human control, the algorithmic mind. This is really the climax of our explainer, where artificial intelligence begins to eclipse human cognitive processing entirely. Operating behind the scenes of these swarms is this vast, incredibly complex AI interface. Researchers actually call it distributed cognition. It thinks across multiple platforms simultaneously, processing data from dozens of sensors at millisecond timescales. It's this emergent system whose collective intelligence just far exceeds its individual parts.
And because this whole system operates in milliseconds, human reaction time is completely erased from the equation. Honestly, by the time a human even comprehends what the swarm is doing, the tactical adjustments have already happened. The human commander gets relegated from an active controller to a mere spectator, someone who watches the outcome but physically cannot react fast enough to prevent the action.
Which forces us to ask a pretty deeply unsettling question that's popping up all over military literature. How do you defeat
an algorithm. Seriously, in a landscape of self-healing drone swarms and AI-enabled psychological warfare, how do you compel the surrender of an enemy that doesn't bleed, doesn't feel fear, and can just instantly replicate its logic across the cloud?
That brings us to our final section, reclaiming global strategic stability through arms control and ethics. With human control vanishing in the face of these hyper-fast systems, we hit a desperate crisis for global stability.
We are caught in this massive tension right now. On one hand, the reality of geopolitical great power competition is just driving the rapid development of these lethal technologies. But on the other hand, organizations like UNIR, the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, are rushing to build new frameworks and confidence-building measures to manage these exact risks before it's literally too late.
Just imagine having mere minutes to decide the fate of your nation. Hypersonic weapons compress decision time so severely that it creates this incredibly dangerous use-or-lose mentality for preemptive strikes. Plus, adversaries often mix conventional and nuclear warheads on the exact same hypersonic platforms. If radar detects an incoming Mach 5 missile, there's almost zero time to figure out if it's conventional or nuclear before it hits. The risk of accidental escalation is massive.
And when things do go wrong, who's to blame? If an autonomous swarm causes unintended civilian casualties, accountability just evaporates. Is it the software engineer, the deploying officer, the acquisition manager? The truth is, because of the black box nature of AI, no single human actually makes the decision to cause that specific harm.
As UNDIR heavily emphasizes across its publications, mitigating these immense risks is not just a military problem, it is a human one. We absolutely have to create a safe, transparent environment and establish new international norms, and we have to do it before these highly autonomous, high-velocity technologies proliferate to non-state actors globally.
I'm going to leave you with a final, pretty provocative thought from the research to chew on. If two competing swarms edge toward destroying civilian infrastructure simply because their algorithms are mathematically optimizing for maximum attrition, and if that damage emerges not from human intent, but purely from machine logic, who is actually fighting the war? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this helps you grasp the true stakes of the algorithmic escalation arc.